The Velthari Empire had conquered 97 species across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Their method was always the same: overwhelming force delivered through perfect military precision. No emotion, no chaos, just cold mathematical warfare that had never failed them in 800 years of expansion. Commander Nexvol stood in the command center of the flagship Eternal Order, his 6 arms manipulating holographic displays that showed the final phase of humanity's destruction. The blue-skinned alien's large black eyes reflected the tactical readouts with satisfaction. Around him, dozens of his officers worked at crystalline consoles, their movements synchronized like parts of a vast machine. "Status report on the human colonies," Nexvol commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had personally overseen the extinction of entire civilizations. "All major population centers are surrounded, Commander," replied his tactical officer. "Their fleet consists of 43 vessels using primitive projectile weapons and chemical propulsion. Our analysis indicates their technology is approximately 4 centuries behind galactic standard." Nexvol's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. Humans were barely worth the energy expenditure, but the Empire's doctrine demanded complete control of every habitable system. These creatures, with their crude kinetic weapons and chaotic military structure, would serve as a brief training exercise for his newer officers. The massive Velthari fleet hung in perfect geometric formation around the human colonies. Each ship was positioned exactly where the tactical computers had calculated for maximum efficiency. Their plasma cannons charged in synchronized waves, creating beautiful patterns of energy that would soon reduce human settlements to ash. 3,000 light-years away, Captain Kim Hyun sat in the command chair of Defense Station 7, orbiting the colony world of New Seoul. The 35-year-old officer had served in 3 border conflicts, but nothing had prepared him for this. Through the station's viewports, he could see the alien ships arranged like deadly flowers against the starfield. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Velthari flagship," reported Communications Officer Park Jin, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. The main screen flickered to life, showing Commander Nexvol in all his terrifying alien majesty. The creature's voice resonated through the station's speakers with mechanical precision. "Humans of this system, I am Commander Nexvol of the Velthari Third Fleet. Your species has been evaluated and found insufficient for integration into our empire. You have 12 standard hours to evacuate your military personnel and surrender unconditionally. Resistance is futile and will only result in unnecessary suffering." Hyun stood slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. Around him, his crew watched with mixture of terror and determination. These were good people, farmers, miners, and settlers, who had come to the edge of space seeking new lives for their families. "On what authority do you make these demands?" Hyun asked calmly. Nexvol's laugh was like grinding metal. "Authority of superior force, human. Your kinetic weapons are primitive relics. Your battle formations lack sophistication. Your tactical doctrine is chaos masquerading as strategy. We have studied your species extensively. You wage war like children playing with toys." The alien commander gestured to his tactical display, showing human ships scattered in what appeared to be random positions around the colonies. "Observe your own fleet positioning. No mathematical precision, no energy efficiency calculations, no predictable engagement protocols. This is why your species will join the 97 others we have absorbed or eliminated." Hyun smiled, and something in that expression made several of his officers straighten with renewed hope. The captain walked closer to the screen, looking directly into Nexvol's black eyes. "You know what your mistake is, Commander. You think war is about mathematics and efficiency. You've conquered 97 species who probably thought the same way you do, but you've never faced humans before." "Your bravado is irrelevant," Nexvol replied. "Emotion has no place in warfare. Logic and superior technology determine victory. We'll see about that." Hyun turned to his communications officer. "Park Jin, activate the emergency beacon. Full spectrum broadcast." The young woman's fingers flew over her console. Deep space sensors would detect the signal across multiple star systems, carrying a simple message that every human military unit knew by heart. Help was coming. Nexvol observed the transmission with mild interest. "Calling for reinforcements. Our intelligence reports indicate your nearest fleet elements are weeks away. You cannot delay the inevitable." Hyun returned to his command chair, settling back with the confidence of someone who knew something his enemy didn't. "Commander, you've studied human tactics and technology, but you've missed the most important thing about us." "And what is that, human?" "We don't just fight wars. We are war itself. Every human carries the genetic memory of 10,000 years of conflict. We fought with sticks and stones, swords and guns, in trenches and in space. War isn't something we do, it's something we are." The transmission ended abruptly as Nexvol cut the connection. Around the command center, his officers continued their methodical preparations for humanity's destruction. But somewhere in the depths of space, something was stirring that would challenge everything the Velthari thought they knew about warfare. The fabric of space twisted and tore as something massive forced its way through hyperspace. Warning klaxons screamed across every Velthari ship as their sensors detected the incoming arrival. What emerged from the dimensional rift was unlike anything in their tactical databases. The UES Retribution materialized at the edge of the solar system like a metallic mountain dropped from the heavens. The human battleship stretched nearly 3 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull a patchwork of armor plates, weapon mounts, and battle scars that told the story of 100 conflicts. Unlike the sleek, symmetrical designs of Velthari vessels, the Retribution looked like it had been built for one purpose only: to survive anything the universe could throw at it and hit back twice as hard. Captain Park Min stood on the bridge, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of tactical displays. At 42 years old, he had commanded the Retribution through the Outer Rim Wars, the Centauri Rebellion, and countless smaller conflicts that had earned him a reputation as the most dangerous ship captain in human space. His crew called him the Iron Wolf, though never to his face. "Tactical analysis, Lieutenant," Park ordered, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what they faced. Lieutenant Choi Da bent over her sensor console, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. The 28-year-old officer had graduated, top of her class from the Naval Academy. But even her extensive training hadn't prepared her for what the sensors were showing. "Sir, we're looking at approximately 200 Velthari vessels, arranged in a perfect sphere around the human colonies. Their formation is mathematically precise, each ship positioned for optimal firing solutions and mutual support. Energy. Signatures indicate they're charging plasma weapons in synchronized waves." Park studied the tactical display with the eye of a predator sizing up its prey. The alien fleet moved with mechanical precision, each vessel maintaining exact distances and angles as they maneuvered into attack positions. It was beautiful in its mathematical perfection and absolutely predictable. "They fight like a computer program," Choi Da observed, shaking her head in amazement. "Look at those movement patterns. Every ship follows the exact same protocols. No variation, no individual initiative." Park nodded grimly. He had fought artificial intelligences before, and this was exactly how they operated. Flawless execution of predetermined algorithms with no room for creativity or adaptation. The Velthari might be organic beings, but they had turned themselves into biological machines. "Engineering, what's our status?" Park called out. Chief Engineer Lee Sang's voice crackled over the intercom from deep within the ship's belly. "All systems green, Captain. The new kinetic accelerators are fully charged, and I've got the fusion reactors running at 110%. She's ready for whatever you want to throw at her." The Retribution was a testament to human engineering philosophy. If something worked, you made it bigger, tougher, and more dangerous. Her main guns were magnetic rail systems that could hurl tungsten slugs at significant fractions of light speed. Her missile tubes carried everything from nuclear warheads to experimental antimatter torpedoes. And her armor was a composite of materials salvaged from a dozen different battlefields, each plate telling its own story of survival. "Communications, open a channel to the Velthari flagship," Park ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing Commander Nexvol in his pristine command center. The alien's black eyes widened slightly as he took in the scarred human captain and his battle-worn bridge. "This is Captain Park Min of the United Earthship, Retribution," Park said, his voice carrying across space with quiet authority. "You have 30 seconds to withdraw your forces from this system and return to whatever hole you crawled out of." Nexevol's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "A single human vessel against my entire fleet. Your arrogance is amusing, Captain. Perhaps you fail to notice that you are outnumbered 200 to 1. "I noticed," Park replied, calmly. "I'm just not impressed. Your ship, while large, represents technology centuries behind our own," Nexevol continued, his tone dripping with condescension. "Our plasma weapons will cut through your primitive armor, like particle beams, through gas clouds. Your kinetic projectiles cannot penetrate our energy shields. This is not warfare, this is an execution." Park's expression never changed, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Around him, his bridge crew prepared for what was coming with the smooth efficiency of veterans who had danced with death countless times before. "You know what your problem is, Commander? You think war is about technology and numbers. You've conquered 97 species who probably thought the same way, but you've never faced humans who remember what war really means." "Enlighten me," Nexevol said mockingly. "War isn't about having the best weapons or the most ships," Park said, leaning forward in his command chair. "War is about being willing to do whatever it takes to protect what matters to you. It's about turning desperation into strength and making the impossible happen through sheer bloody-minded stubbornness." "Philosophical nonsense," Nexevol dismissed. "Mathematics and superior firepower determine victory." Park smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "We'll see about that." He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "All hands, this is the captain. We've got 200 alien ships between us and our people. They think they've already won because they've got us outnumbered and outgunned. They're about to learn why that doesn't matter when you're fighting humans." He stood from his command chair, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive warship. "All weapons free. Show them what the Retribution can do." The Retribution's engines roared to life, with a sound that resonated through the ship's hull like the growl of some massive predator. Captain Park Min gripped his command chair as the battleship surged forward, accelerating directly toward the center of the Velthari formation. Every military academy in the galaxy taught the same basic principle: never charge directly into an enemy fleet. It was suicide, plain and simple. Park had never been one to follow the textbooks. "Captain, they're locking weapons on us," reported Lieutenant Choydar, her voice tight with controlled excitement rather than fear. 200 plasma cannons charging to full power. "Let them," Park replied calmly. "Chief Gunner Lee, are you ready to show these aliens what human creativity looks like?" From his position at the weapons console, Chief Gunner Lee Jun cracked his knuckles with anticipation. The 34-year-old weapons specialist had served on 17 different ships before finding his home aboard the Retribution. He understood something that most military officers never grasped. Warfare wasn't about following patterns. It was about breaking them. "All weapon systems armed and ready, Captain. Railguns loaded with tungsten penetrators, missile tubes packed with everything, from nukes to sensor scramblers. I've got a few surprises cooked up that these blue-skinned bastards have never seen before." The Retribution plowed through space like a meteor, its massive bulk defying the Velthari's tactical predictions. Their formation had been calculated for a traditional engagement: long-range energy exchanges with careful positioning and methodical target prioritization. What they got instead was a 3-kilometer-long hammer charging straight at their geometric perfection. Commander Nexevol stood frozen at his tactical display as proximity alarms screamed throughout his flagship. "This is impossible. No commander would sacrifice his ship in such a reckless manner. Sir, should we adjust formation to compensate?" asked his tactical officer, 6 arms trembling over the control surfaces. "No," Nexevol replied, his voice strained. "Maintain position. Their ship cannot survive concentrated fire from our entire fleet. Mathematics dictates their destruction." The first railgun salvo erupted from the Retribution's bow like thunder made visible. 12 tungsten slugs, each weighing several tons and moving at 30% of light speed, screamed across space toward the Velthari formation. But instead of targeting the largest or most threatening ships, Lee Jun had selected his marks. Based on pure psychological impact, the lead projectile struck a Velthari cruiser dead center, punching through its energy shields like they were made of paper. The kinetic energy transfer was catastrophic. The alien ship simply disintegrated, spreading debris across a sphere of space several kilometers wide. The second slug took out a destroyer's engine section, sending the vessel spinning helplessly. Into its neighbor. Impossible, Nexvol shrieked as his perfect formation began to waver. Kinetic weapons cannot penetrate our shield technology. What the Velthari commander didn't understand was that human kinetic weapons weren't designed around alien shield frequencies. Every other species in the galaxy had moved to energy-based warfare, abandoning primitive projectiles centuries ago. The Velthari shields were calibrated to stop plasma and particle beams, not chunks of metal moving at relativistic speeds. Li Jun was just getting started. His fingers danced across the targeting controls with the skill of a master pianist, selecting targets not for maximum tactical advantage, but for maximum chaos. Her ammunition transport exploded in spectacular fashion, taking 3 nearby escorts with it. A command vessel lost its communication array, cutting it off from the fleet network. A troop carrier's artificial gravity failed, sending its crew tumbling helplessly through the corridors. "Missile launch," called out Weapons Officer Kim Ho from his station, 60 tubes firing in sequence. The Retribution's missile pods opened like deadly flowers, spitting out a swarm of projectiles that scattered across the battlefield in seemingly random directions. Half were actual warheads, nuclear fusion bombs, antimatter torpedoes, and experimental plasma charges. The other half were decoys, sensor scramblers, and electronic warfare packages designed to confuse and misdirect. The Velthari point defense systems went crazy trying to track and intercept the incoming swarm. Their targeting computers, designed for orderly engagement sequences, couldn't handle the chaotic mix of real threats and false signals. Some missiles were destroyed, others slipped through to detonate against hulls and shields, but the real damage was psychological. "They're not following any tactical doctrine," reported Nexvol's aide, his voice rising in panic. "Their targeting pattern makes no sense. They're hitting supply ships, communication vessels, even medical frigates." Nexvol watched in growing horror as his mathematically perfect fleet dissolved into confusion. Ships broke formation trying to avoid the seemingly random missile strikes. Communications channels filled with contradictory orders as vessel commanders tried to adapt to tactics that had no logic behind them. The Retribution carved through the formation like a shark through a school of fish, its weapons firing in constant, unpredictable bursts. Li Jun switched targets mid-salvo, sometimes firing a full spread at empty space just to keep the enemy guessing. When a cluster of Velthari ships tried to coordinate their plasma cannon fire, he launched a spread of boarding pods directly at them. Boarding pods? Nexvol stared at his tactical display in disbelief. During active combat? This violates every principle of space warfare. The pods never reached their targets, they weren't supposed to. They exploded halfway across the gap, filling space with debris and electromagnetic interference that disrupted the Velthari targeting systems just long enough for the Retribution to slip past their firing solution. "Sir," whispered Nexvol's tactical officer, "they're not trying to win through superior firepower. They're trying to win through chaos itself." The human battleship continued its rampage through the alien formation, leaving destruction and confusion in its wake. Every shot fired, every missile launched, every maneuver executed served not just a tactical purpose but a psychological one. The Velthari had mastered the science of warfare, but they had never encountered opponents who treated battle as an art form, painted with controlled madness. "They're fighting like madmen," the aide whispered, his voice filled with something. "That might have been awe." The Retribution shuddered as a concentrated plasma barrage from 6 Velthari cruisers struck its starboard hull. Armor plating that had survived battles across 3 star systems cracked and peeled away like old paint. Warning lights bathed the engineering section in hellish red as damage reports flooded the communication channels. Engineering Officer Han Sol didn't even flinch as sparks showered down around her workstation. The 31-year-old engineer had grown up in the shipyards of Mars, where her father had taught her that every machine had a soul. You just had to know how to listen to it. Right now, the Retribution was screaming in pain, but it wasn't ready to die. Power coupling to the main railguns is severed, reported technician Yoon Ki from across the engineering bay. We're losing primary weapons. Han Sol's hands flew across her control panels, rerouting power flows through backup systems that weren't designed to handle such massive energy loads. Not if I can help it. Kim, get me access to the mining laser array. Park, I need you to bypass the safety protocols on the industrial cutters. The engineering crew moved with practiced efficiency, turning maintenance equipment into instruments of war. The Retribution had been designed as both a battleship and a deep space construction vessel, equipped with mining lasers powerful enough to carve through asteroids and industrial cutters that could slice through the hull of any ship in the galaxy. "Captain," Han Sol called over the intercom, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "I'm giving you mining lasers on the port weapon grid. They're not designed for ship-to-ship combat, but they'll burn through anything that gets close." Enough. On the bridge, Captain Park Min smiled grimly as new weapon indicators lit up on his tactical display. This was what separated humans from every other species in the galaxy. When their primary weapons failed, they didn't surrender or retreat. They improvised, adapted, and turned whatever was available into something deadly. Outstanding work. Han Sol, Chief Gunner Lee, you now have mining equipment. Make it count. Li Jun studied his new options with the enthusiasm of an artist presented with fresh colors. The mining lasers weren't as powerful as the railguns, but they fired continuous beams that could slice through enemy hulls like hot knives through butter. He targeted a Velthari destroyer that had moved too close, and the industrial laser carved a glowing line across its hull from bow to stern. The alien ship vented atmosphere and debris as its compartments opened to space. But the Retribution wasn't finished. Another plasma volley struck the human battleship's dorsal armor, punching through to the inner hull. Atmosphere screamed out through the breach before emergency bulkheads slammed shut. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Damage Control Officer Cho Min over the intercom. "We're losing structural integrity on the starboard side." Without hesitation, repair teams rushed toward the damaged section, but instead of simply patching the hole, they did something that would have horrified any conventional military engineer. They began welding pieces of destroyed Velthari ships to their own hull, using enemy debris as makeshift armor plating. "What are they doing?" Commander Nexevol stared at his tactical display in bewilderment. "They're attaching our destroyed vessels to their own ship." The human crew worked with desperate efficiency, cutting pieces from the wreckage of alien cruisers and welding them over damaged sections of their own armor. It looked insane, but it worked. The composite armor created by mixing human and Velthari materials actually provided better protection than either alone. Captain Park moved through his ship like a conductor directing a symphony of controlled chaos. He wasn't sitting safely on his bridge issuing orders from a distance. He was in the corridors with his crew, making split-second decisions based on conditions that changed moment by moment. "Weapons target that command ship with everything we have," Park ordered, as he arrived at the forward weapons bay. "Engineering, I need more power to the forward shields." "Captain, the power grid can't handle both," Han Sol replied through gritted teeth. "If I route more energy to shields, we lose the mining lasers. Then give me 30 seconds of shield power, then switch to weapons," Park decided instantly. "We'll punch through their formation and hit them where they don't expect it." This was the human way of warfare. No rigid battle plans that crumbled at first contact with the enemy. Instead, there was constant adaptation, moment-by-moment decisions, based on instinct and experience, rather than mathematical calculations. Every human on the ship understood their role not as a cog in a machine, but as part of a living organism that could think, adapt, and evolve under pressure. The Velthari. Fleet continued to hammer the lone human ship with coordinated plasma barrages, but something impossible was happening. Instead of weakening under the assault, the Retribution seemed to be getting stronger. Each hit prompted new innovations, new adaptations that made the ship more dangerous than before. "Impossible," Nexvol whispered as he watched the human vessel shrug off attacks that should have destroyed it. No ship can survive this level of concentrated fire, but the Retribution wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. When its main sensors were damaged, the crew rigged mining scanners to track enemy ships. When the primary communication array was destroyed, they used maintenance channels to coordinate attacks. Every system that failed was replaced by something, jury-rigged, improvised, and often more effective than the original. The ship fought like a living creature, adapting and evolving with each exchange. Damage that would have crippled any other vessel only made the humans more creative, more determined, more dangerous. They turned their enemies' weapons against them, used debris as armor, and converted mining equipment into instruments of destruction. The Velthari began to understand a terrifying truth. They weren't fighting a machine or even a traditional military force. They were fighting something far more dangerous. Humans who had embraced the fundamental chaos of warfare and made it their greatest strength. Every hit they landed only made their enemies more unpredictable, more adaptable, more deadly. The retribution carved through their formation like a force of nature, leaving destruction and bewilderment in its wake. The Velthari formation cracked, like ice under pressure. What had begun as a perfect geometric sphere of 200 warships now resembled a broken puzzle, with vessels fleeing in every direction as their centuries-old tactical doctrine collapsed around them. Ships that had maintained precise spacing for the entire battle suddenly broke ranks, their commanders no longer trusting in the mathematical certainty that had guided their empire for 800 years. Commander Nexvol stood frozen at his tactical display, watching his fleet disintegrate before his eyes. 47 Velthari vessels had been destroyed or disabled by a single human ship, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through something far more terrifying: the complete abandonment of predictable warfare. "Sir, the fleet is requesting permission to withdraw," his communications officer reported, her voice shaking with barely controlled panic. "Multiple ships are reporting critical damage from weapons that shouldn't exist." Nexvol's 6 arms trembled as he gripped the edge of his command console. His perfect mind, trained from birth to calculate probabilities and optimize tactical solutions, couldn't process what he had witnessed. The humans had turned mining equipment into weapons of war, used debris as armor, and coordinated attacks through maintenance channels. They had violated every principle of civilized warfare and somehow emerged victorious. "Grant the withdrawal," he whispered, his voice hollow with defeat. "All ships, retreat to the outer system. Maintain minimum safe distance from the human vessel." Across the battlefield, Velthari ships limped away from the retribution like wounded animals fleeing a predator. Their sleek hulls, once pristine examples of technological perfection, now bore the scars of humanity's chaotic warfare. Some vessels had been cut in half by mining lasers, others had been gutted by projectiles that shouldn't have penetrated. Their shields. The survivors carried a new understanding. They had encountered something beyond their comprehension. Captain Park Min stood on the bridge of the Retribution, surveying the damage around him. The ship looked like it had been through a meat grinder. Sections of the hull were missing entirely, replaced by welded plates of alien metal that gleamed dully in the starlight. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows through corridors where the main power grid had failed. The proud battleship had become something new, a patchwork warrior that wore its scars like battle honors. "Casualty report," Park ordered, his voice heavy with exhaustion. 17 dead, 43 wounded, reported Medical Officer Jung Ho through the intercom. "Could have been much worse, Captain. The crew performed miracles today." Park nodded silently. 17 good people who would never see home again, but their sacrifice had saved millions of lives in the colonies below. That was the mathematics of war that no computer could calculate, the value of courage measured against the cost of freedom. "Engineering, what's our status?" he called out. Han Sol's voice crackled through damaged speakers. "We're flying on stubbornness and spare parts, Captain. Main engines are at 60%. Weapon systems are a mess of jury-rigged components, and I'm pretty sure half our armor is made from alien scrap metal. But she'll get us home." Communications Officer Yuna looked up from her station, her young face streaked with smoke, but her eyes bright with victory. "Captain, I'm receiving surrender requests from 3 damaged Velthari vessels. They're asking for safe passage to evacuate their wounded. Park considered this for a moment. The alien ships were defenseless, their crews probably terrified beyond reason. He could have destroyed them easily, but that wasn't the human way. Humans fought like demons when threatened, but they also understood mercy. Grant their request, he decided. Escort them to the system's edge and let them go. But make sure they carry a message back to their empire. Yun-Na's fingers moved across her console, opening communication channels that reached across the entire star system. Her voice, clear and strong despite their battered condition, broadcast on all frequencies, not just to the retreating Velthari, but to every human colony, every deep space monitoring station, and every species that might be listening. This is Communications Officer Yun-Na of the United Earthship Retribution, broadcasting on behalf of the Terran Defense Force. To the Velthari Empire and any other species considering aggression against human colonies, we are not conquerors or aggressors. We ask only to be left in peace to build our lives among the stars, but make no mistake about our resolve. She paused, looking around the damaged bridge at her crewmates who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious through sheer determination and innovation. The Terran Defense Force protects what is ours. We will defend our families, our colonies, and our way of life with every weapon at our disposal, and some that don't exist yet. We will turn mining equipment into guns, debris into armor, and desperation into strength. We will fight with methods you cannot predict and tactics you cannot counter. Test us again at your peril. The message echoed across space, carried by quantum communication arrays to every corner of the galaxy. In the days that followed, it would be translated into thousands of languages and analyzed by military strategists on hundreds of worlds. Some would dismiss it as human bravado, but others would recognize the truth behind the words. The Retribution began its long journey home, limping through space like a wounded giant. Behind them, the human colonies were safe, their orbital platforms and surface cities untouched by alien weapons. Children would grow up free because 17 humans had died and one battered ship had refused to surrender. As they passed the outermost monitoring station, Captain Park received a transmission from Captain Kim Hyun on Defense Station 7. The older officer's face appeared on the main screen, his expression mixing relief with profound respect. Outstanding work, Captain Park. The colonies are secure and the Velthari fleet is in full retreat. How did you know it would work? Park smiled tiredly, looking around his destroyed bridge at the crew who had made the impossible happen. Because they studied our technology and our tactics, but they never understood what makes us human. They thought war was about having the best weapons and the most ships. We know it's about having the best reasons to fight and the will to do whatever it takes to protect them. The Retribution continued toward home, carrying with it a new legend that would spread throughout human space and beyond. They had faced an empire that had conquered 97 species, and they had won not through superior technology or numbers, but through the uniquely human ability to turn chaos into victory and desperation into strength. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Humans didn't just wage war, they embodied it. And anyone foolish enough to threaten what they held dear would discover that true warriors aren't born from doctrine or training manuals. They're forged in the crucible of battle itself, tempered by sacrifice and hardened by the unbreakable will to protect those they love. The end.